The second striking detail is that this federally insured bank's holdings of stock derivatives come to a notational amount or face amount of $3.3 trillion. How's that even possible?
Silver is an independent metal, not tethered to any currency, just like gold, and I know you know that. Silver has a dual nature, which allows it to double both as a monetary asset and a commodity. You know that too. Silver has a smaller market base. It's less liquid than gold. You probably know that. Silver's smaller market makes it more volatile and more susceptible to market manipulation. I'm guessing that you know that as well. But I'm going to share with you something that you probably don't know. Something that recently broke about massive manipulation. And Tim, my local coin shop dealer, is going to learn about it with you. But first, how does all this manipulation actually happen? Well, many different ways. One way is the placement of naked shorts in markets. What's a naked short? It's simply selling something that does not exist. And that's illegal. Spoofing is another way that silver is manipulated. It's placing and canceling fake orders to control the spot price. Yeah, that's wrong. And then there's rehypothecation, which is, get this, pledging the same ounce of silver as collateral against multiple loans or contracts and agreements. There are so many ways that markets, especially the silver market, is manipulated. And yes, to some extent, all markets are manipulated. I know that. But I think, and a lot of other people think, that nothing is more manipulated than the silver market. And the most egregious criminal element behind this manipulation is J.P. Morgan Chase. Did you know that they hold at least 133 million ounces of physical silver? That's the most owned under any one name. They also own 50% of the world's COMEX silver bullion. I don't know if you know this, but they are the custodian of the most popular silver ETF on the market, SLV. Do you own SLV? I don't. I highly doubt that they have all the necessary physical silver to back all their shares. And you know the news. You know over and over and over again, JP Morgan has been fined for all kinds of illegalities like naked shorts and spoofing silver. They're not alone. All of them do it. But none of them care one stinking bit about getting caught. They view the fines from the U.S. government for their criminal actions as a cost of doing business. But in J.P. Morgan's case, they are also at the center of a new investigative report within the derivatives market for equities. I just read about this. It was sent to me by Brent Howard, one of my viewers. So thank you so much, Brent. And in a minute, you're going to hear my bullion dealer's reaction to the new shocking display of banking insanity. Let me just, in a few seconds, explain briefly this economic weapon of mass destruction, which is called the derivatives market. Now, there are derivatives that are more traditional, like in agriculture, where a farmer might try to hedge against normal commodity price fluctuations due to weather or failing crops. I'm not talking about that. This isn't cabbage, okay? This is high finance, an epic cesspool of exotic gambling in things like credit default swaps or collateralized debt obligations, CDOs. You remember CDOs or synthetic CDOs from the movie The Big Short? That's what I'm talking about here, guys. Bets on bets on bets on bets on bets. Massive and wild gambling that is estimated to be over, I still can't believe this number, $1 quadrillion. That's $1,000 trillion. And a lot of it is far beyond regulations. And it appears that not only is JP Morgan at the center of this outrageous report, but it goes deeper. to the real owners of these derivatives, the U.S. government itself, and our government's rigging of all the major markets in the world, authorized by the amended Gold Reserve Act back in 1934. So let's hear Tim read some parts of this report. I'll link to it in the description of the video. Check it out below. I'll also provide a link to a petition against JP Morgan. Please sign that. And I'll give you my final thoughts too after Tim speaks. Oh, and if you want to have a little bit more levity with Tim after watching this video, after my bumper music ends, stick around. Many of you have been asking for more of Tim and his, fascinating personal history. And if you watch after the music, you'll get some cool insights into his love of Formula One racing. This article, Tim, really bothered me. It talks about the fact that is JP Morgan that owns 62% of the derivatives in all close to 5,000 banks that are FDIC insured.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It is crazy.
And these guys have been fined how many times and how many millions of dollars?
About half the time they should have been.
Well, I get you, but it's just, is the government in cahoots with what's going on?
I mean, the numbers are unbelievable. It says the second striking detail is that this federally insured bank's holdings of stock derivatives come to a notational amount or face amount of $3.3 trillion.
That's trillion.
How's that even possible?
I can't get my mind wrapped around it.
Maybe that's why Jamie Dimon gets those big bonuses at the end of the year. The third striking detail is 74% of JP Morgan Chase's stock derivatives are not centrally cleared, but instead are opaque over-the-counter contracts, highly likely beyond the scrutiny of bank regulators.
How is this allowed to continue?
I'd like to know how the Fed gets away with buying $120 billion a month of mortgage-backed securities, which are junk bonds. If the Fed buys them, that means they belong to us, right?
Yeah, right.
Or are we just footing the bill?
Yeah, we're footing the bill. Yeah, definitely. There are children and children's children. But how can the banksters get away with that? I mean, really, why aren't we prosecuting this? I know they've been fined constantly. This is JP Morgan we're talking about.
They know some very important people. They are on the inside. How does Nancy Pelosi and her husband get away with insider trading at every turn? I mean, whatever they can trade that will make them a fortune.
This has got to be part and parcel to the manipulation that I constantly read about, people constantly comment on, saying nothing's going to change, Yankee. When are we going to break that?
Well, it's obvious that the big bankers, all the investment bankers in New York, and all the regulators are on the same team. All the regulators, or otherwise something would be done.
So the audits are worthless.
The what?
Yeah, any audits are worthless.
Probably. Or they take too long to matter. It's a lot more than I expected. Yeah.
3.3 trillion. Wow.
But what does that say about the size of that market? If what they're holding is 3.3 trillion, how big is that market?
Wow. I hope it stops. At some point, it's going to, and this stuff is going to rocket up because there's a lot of pent-up potential value that has not been factored into the price of gold and silver yet.
That is true.
All right.
And when that happens, hopefully all the people who follow Yankee stacking will have lots and lots of gold and silver.
Man, I could listen to him forever. And don't forget to listen after the video credits for some behind the scenes with Tim. All right. So with all this manipulation going on, you might be thinking to yourself, why buy silver? It's a good question. If you're looking for a way to get rich quick, don't buy silver. Don't stack it. I mean it. If you're expecting that this crazy manipulation especially by JP Morgan, is going to end without some catastrophic event that breaks the back of the banksters, don't stack silver. But I am buying silver. I'm going to keep stacking it. Why? I'll give you 3 quick reasons. 1, I'm not buying this silver to make a profit in US dollars, in cash. But to potentially provide me and my family with future barter material after a currency collapse. It's insurance, guys. It's not a traditional investment. I'm a prepper stacker. Remember that. Second thing, I believe that the bigger the manipulation grows, the bigger the likelihood it will fail, and especially if governments are covering for them, in league with them, behind it. And the third thing is I believe that manipulation ends when our nation's economic day of reckoning starts. When the failure of the US dollar and its reserve currency status happens, and the collapse occurs in the derivatives market, that will destroy the facade of wealth and the stability in our banking institution. It's going to punish those who have constructed this garbage. And I think that day is coming in the not so distant future, possibly in my lifetime. So I want to be prepared. And I think you should be too. So anyway, stack on, prep on, and I hope your day is A-OK.
So this is a 5-ounce silver coin that I picked up. It commemorates the Apollo 11. It's Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo.
Right.
Moon missions, which is the top 3 for space exploration, and so it celebrates all 3 of those missions. And then it has the helmet reflection from the moon.
Wow.
Yeah, so you can probably shave with this thing if you want to use it as a mirror. Right?
Of course, that never really happened. You realize it was all a hoax.
That's right. No comment on that. I don't have any
Whoopi
comment.
Goldberg can tell you all about that. The whole thing was absolutely a phenomenal success story of American ingenuity and technology. Absolutely amazing. Those guys had to have serious guts. They had to be very trusting. And the fellow who was the commander who actually flew the Saturn V was a guy named Frank Borman. He was actually a customer of mine at one time.
Wow.
Real nice guy, but they didn't know if that thing was going to fly or blow up.
Hey, I have another subscriber of mine that wanted me to ask you a question about who your favorite F1 driver is.
My favorite driver, I would say over time, is Fernando Alonso. He had skills that nobody else had. And he's still racing today. He doesn't race the best car. Hopefully this year he'll have a better car. But I think he could be the best. I mean, he's the best that I have seen personally and witnessed. He does things that, even when he took the world championship away from Michael Schumacher, he would set it up so he's going to pass on the outside of a turn. Schumacher would block and he'd go inside him and make an impossible move and pass. It was just, he did things like that all the time.
He also wanted me to ask you what you thought of the 2021 results.
I thought they were terrific. And people say that the stewards changed the rules to make sure that Verstappen won. That's not true at all. I mean, NASCAR has always done that. In there are times in races where you're getting toward the end of a race in IndyCar racing, and they would let the lap cars go ahead. It is an option that the stewards have, is to get the lapped cars out of the way, okay, so they could have a race. And when Mercedes principal complained, the steward of the race, or the whatever they call this guy, he said, "We're trying to have a race here." That was his answer. And Verstappen, he was the best driver on the track in every race this year. And he's he won, 12 races or something like that? He deserved it.
Cool.
And there are a couple of times where he tangled with Lewis Hamilton. The one time it was dangerous at Silverstone. He put him off the track in a high-speed turn, but he went too deep and didn't give Verstappen any option. He was going off the track because he was trying to make a pass on the outside. He assumed that Lewis Hamilton would cut the apex, but he didn't. He just kept going deep, and then so Verstappen didn't have any chance. Which that's not necessarily a racing incident. That's kind of a dirty tactic. But now, if that had been Fernando Alonso, he would have hit the brakes and passed on the inside. But that's Verstappen is very young. He has a tremendous amount of talent. He was the most talented driver on the course this year, without any question. And I think Lewis Hamilton would even agree to that.
That's a pretty crazy occupation too. I mean, that's like not quite maybe astronaut level, but those guys are incredibly risky.
Back in the early 70s, they would lose. The average was a driver every race. Somebody was getting killed, and they've improved the safety tremendously. A few years ago, Felipe Massa was driving down a straightaway, and the car in front of him lost a spring, a suspension spring, and it bounced down and hit him in the head. And he's going 100-something miles an hour, and he was out for a few races. But that's what prompted them to put the protection over the top of the driver. The last one to be killed, I think, was a guy named Bianchi, and he went off the track in a dangerous situation. There was something, the track was beginning to rain or something, and his car went sideways, and the top of the car slammed into a vehicle that had been parked there to lift cars off the track. That's why they have the halo now on the cars.
Right.
And it's safer, but it takes a tremendous talent. So I had never driven a Formula One car, and I had an opportunity to get in somebody's vintage car, but opted not to. I didn't want to take a chance with it. Right. But today it's next to impossible. I wouldn't even get in one of the cars today. There's too much to think about. And these cars they're fully computerized. The shifting is done for you. Their braking is done for you. Everything is done for the driver. Yeah. But you really need to learn a lot of the technology. Cool. So you stay on the track.
I'd love to see you in the Formula One. I'd love to too. Actually, leave a comment down below if you'd like to see Tim doing the circuit on a Formula One.
When I was younger, I would definitely take that chance.
I bet you would.